I had been mowing lawns for a few years, enough to know the rhythm of the work, the satisfaction of neatly trimmed grass under a summer sun. It was mostly straightforward, mostly silent. That was until I got the call about the property on Willow Lane. The address itself was unassuming, tucked behind a line of maple trees with a wrought iron gate that squeaked every time I pushed it open. But the house, God? The house looked abandoned. The blinds were always shut tight, the driveway dust-covered, as if no one had walked there in months. I shrugged at first, thinking maybe the owners were on vacation. The work didn't pay extra for mystery. The first time I approached, I imagined I'd never even see a soul inside. The grass was wild at the edges, the hedges clawed toward the sky like neglected hands. I started with the mower, each pass humming against the quiet, and I worked for hours under the glaring sun. I didn't expect anyone to interrupt me, and, truthfully, that was fine. But then, the first hint that someone might actually live there, a movement behind the blinds. Just a flicker, almost imperceptible, but enough to make me stop mid-stride. I froze, listening to the faint sound of something metallic hitting a shelf. Or maybe it was just my imagination. I shook it off and kept working. The second time, I saw him more clearly. Not directly, never directly, but I caught the outline of a man behind the curtain. He was tall, shoulders squared, posture careful, as if he didn't want to draw attention. My heart did that stupid, eager flip that told me curiosity wasn't the only thing at play. Attraction, subtle and strange, tugged at my chest. By the third week, the silence broke. I was trimming the rose bushes near the porch when the door opened quietly, a polite creak announcing him without announcing him too loudly. He stepped out with a glass of water in hand, tall and precise, his dark hair slightly mussed from whatever he'd been doing inside. "Water?" he asked, his voice calm but tinged with something unreadable nervousness maybe, or caution. His eyes lingered on me longer than necessary before darting away, to the ground, the glass, anything but meeting mine fully. I nodded, gratefully. "Thanks. It's hot out here." He offered a faint, polite smile, and for a moment, I caught the careful angles of his face, the sharp jawline, the way his lips pressed lightly together, almost as if he were holding something back. He didn't stay long. A nod, a slight bow of his head, and then he retreated back behind the blinds, leaving me staring after him, more intrigued than I wanted to admit. I couldn't stop thinking about him. Who was he? Why did he hide behind the curtains like a secret? There was something almost magnetic about his distance, the careful, taut way he moved. The house didn't feel abandoned anymore. It felt like it was holding its breath, waiting. I worked longer that afternoon, pushing my thoughts into the rhythm of the mower, trying not to imagine what it would feel like to stand that close, to hear him speak without the glass between us, without the curtain shielding him. But every few minutes, my gaze drifted to the window. Weeks passed, and I kept coming back. The lawn needed care, yes, but I think I was searching for him too, for the fleeting glimpses, the polite nods, the water offered like a peace treaty. He didn't speak much, just the occasional, "Be careful near the rose bushes," or "Don't overwater the new sod." And yet, each word felt deliberate, intimate, in a quiet, restrained way. I started noticing the small things. The faint scent of his cologne drifting out the slightly ajar door, the soft hum of a record player in the background when the blinds shifted just right, the way he paused mid-step as if unsure whether to come outside or stay hidden. One afternoon, after weeks of routine, I was raking leaves at the far edge of the yard when I heard him behind me. I hadn't expected him, and the sudden proximity made my chest tighten. "You're thorough," he said, voice low, careful. "Most people, they just do the front yard." I laughed softly, brushing a bead of sweat from my forehead. "I like finishing what I start." He gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes, and for a moment, he lingered at the threshold of the porch. I wanted to ask him inside, to break the quiet distance, but the words didn't come. Instead, he simply nodded and disappeared again. It was maddening and magnetic. By the fourth week, I realized I was looking forward to it, the work, yes, but also the brief, almost ghostly interactions. Each time he offered water, each small nod, it was like a quiet heartbeat threading through my otherwise mundane days. I started noticing the patterns. How he'd appear only when I was on the porch, never in the yard's center. How his voice, though soft, carried a certain weight that made my skin tingle. How his hands, when he handed over a drink or a towel, lingered slightly longer than necessary. I didn't know his name. That wasn't important, I told myself. But part of me, an impatient, foolish part, wanted it. Wanted to speak with him beyond water and be careful. Then, one late afternoon, as I was rolling the mower back to the shed, he stepped out again. But this time, he lingered longer. Not just a nod or a polite offering. He watched me with something different in his eyes, a cautious warmth, a flicker of interest. "Do you want a glass of water?" he asked, almost as if testing the waters. I took it from him, hands brushing slightly. Electricity, subtle and undeniable, pulsed through that brief contact. I swallowed, both water and something else, something heavier. "Thanks," I murmured. His lips twitched. "You're welcome, Alex." My heart jumped. He knew my name. And just like that, the quiet tension between us stretched, palpable and electric, in the golden light of the setting sun. It was then I realized I didn't just want to mow his lawn. I wanted to know him. All of him. The polite, distant man behind the blinds. The nervous, careful one offering water. The mysterious heartbeat in the empty house. And somehow, I felt certain that he might want the same, though neither of us would admit it yet. After that first exchange of names, the rhythm of our meetings subtly shifted. I kept coming back weekly, the mower and hedge trimmer my excuse, though I no longer needed one. Every visit, I found myself scanning the windows first, hoping for a glimpse of him, a shadow, a flicker behind the blinds. Sometimes I'd catch it, just a silhouette, a hand brushing the curtain aside for a brief, clandestine look. The conversations were minimal at first. A few words about the weather, a nod toward a newly planted bush, the occasional, "Careful, it's slippery near the pond." But each word carried a weight, a quiet intimacy that neither of us fully acknowledged. It was on a particularly stormy afternoon, the kind of sudden summer rain that fell like silver threads slicing through the heat, that things began to change. I was dragging a tarp over the garden furniture when I felt him behind me. I hadn't heard the door open. "You'll get soaked," he said, voice low but steady. "Come inside. We'll wait the worst of it out." I froze. Invited inside, by him, my chest thudded like a drum, the storm outside insignificant compared to the one inside me. I followed him into the house, shoes squeaking against the polished wood floors. He moved with that same careful precision, hands brushing lightly against the doorframe, as if conscious of every inch of space between us. He gestured toward the small sitting room. "Tea?" he asked, already moving toward the kettle. I nodded, almost too quickly. "Sure." We sat in silence at first, the storm pounding against the windows, filling the gaps where conversation might have gone. I found myself staring at my hands, at the sleeves of my shirt clinging to my arms from the rain, and then at him, boss fiddling with the teapot, lips pressed together, eyes not quite meeting mine. There was tension in the silence, thick and tangible, like the air before a lightning strike. I wanted to speak, to break it, but the words lodged somewhere in my chest, heavy and stubborn. Instead, I let my gaze wander over him the way the light from the window outlined his jaw, the slight tremor of his hands, the careful way he poured the tea. Finally, he spoke. His voice was quieter than the storm, almost intimate. "I used to write in cafes," he began, eyes downcast. "But after someone important left, I needed silence. The suburbs, the quiet, it's how I heal." I didn't press for details. There was something sacred about his confession, something delicate that begged respect. Instead, I reached across the small coffee table, brushing a hand over mine as I accepted the tea he offered. It was warm, grounding, a tether in the storm of emotions swirling inside me. We sipped in silence, the kind that doesn't feel empty but loaded with possibility. I noticed him steal glances at me when he thought I wasn't looking, his lips slightly parted, his breath shallow. My pulse raced with the awareness that we were both teetering on the edge of something unspoken. Then he broke the silence by saying, "You're strong for this kind of work." His eyes flicked down my arms, then back up quickly, as though embarrassed to be caught noticing. "I mean, mowing, trimming, lifting it isn't easy, but you make it look easy." A faint smile tugged at my lips. "I used to be a fitness trainer," I admitted. Spent years in a gym, counting reps and showing people how to use dumbbells without hurting themselves. He tilted his head slightly, interest sparking. "And now you cut lawns?" "I like gardening," I said simply, shrugging. Being outside, working with my hands, watching things grow. The gym was fine, but it always felt temporary. People chasing results, getting what they wanted, and leaving. Out here, it feels different. I can see the changes, plants thriving, lawns coming back to life. It feels real. He studied me, quiet for a moment, as though weighing my words. That makes sense, he murmured. His voice was softer now, contemplative. I suppose there's something honest about it. Nature doesn't lie the way people do. His words lingered in the air, heavier than the storm outside. I wanted to ask what he meant, what kind of wounds he was hiding behind those half-closed blinds. But I didn't. I just nodded, sipping my tea. I don't meet many people who choose a harder path just because they love it, he said finally. I laughed quietly. Guess I'm stubborn that way. This time, his lips curved, a small smile I hadn't seen before. And it wasn't forced, wasn't polite, it was genuine. It changed his whole face, softening it, making him look younger, less haunted. Something had shifted between us, not in touch or in closeness, but in understanding. The storm went on outside, but the silence inside no longer felt heavy. It felt warm. The next morning, I couldn't stop replaying it in my mind. The brush of lips that didn't touch, the warmth of his presence, the faintest spark of something that could ignite. But when I returned from my usual work, he was distant again, polite, precise, and careful. I tried to focus on the work, the mower, the edging, the hedges. They demanded attention. And yet, every glance at the windows, every flicker of movement behind the curtains reminded me that it hadn't been a dream. He had been there. He had felt it, too. Day after day, the pattern continued. I mowed, and he watched. Sometimes he offered me water, sometimes just a polite nod. Occasionally, small snippets of conversation drifted through comments about the weather, the lawn, books he was reading. Always careful, always restrained. But beneath it all, the tension lingered, palpable and simmering, waiting for the storm to return. Then came the afternoon I helped him cover the garden furniture. The rain had come suddenly, and the wind whipped the tarp out of my hands. I nearly lost my balance chasing it when he appeared, steady and calm. "Let me," he said, taking one corner of the tarp. Our hands met briefly, electricity sparking through the light contact. I felt my chest tighten, a pulse of awareness so sharp it made the rain feel distant. "Thanks," I murmured, voice low. He offered a faint smile, then gestured toward the house. "Tea?" I followed him inside, the smell of warm wood and faint cedar wrapping around me like a cloak. He moved to the kitchen while I set my wet gloves on the counter. The kettle hissed, steam curling into the air, and I realized I was acutely aware of every movement, every subtle breath, every slight hesitation in the room. We sat again, tea in hand, and this time the silence was nearly unbearable. I found myself noticing everything: the curve of his shoulders, the delicate angle of his fingers around the cup, the way he swallowed when he spoke. He started to talk, finally, opening up about his writing, about the void left by loss, about the silence he craved. I listened, captivated, aware that every word, every pause, every tremor of his voice drew me closer. And then I found myself leaning forward impulsively, caught in his gravity. He leaned in too, just enough for our lips to hover, the air between us charged with tension and longing. And then, as if the universe had a cruel sense of timing, a delivery knocked at the door. We both jumped, and he pulled back sharply, composing himself with a professionalism that only made my pulse ache more. "I should get that," he muttered. I nodded, swallowing hard, the warmth of the almost kiss lingering like a secret between us. The next day, we didn't speak of it. The work continued. The lawn got mowed, the hedges trimmed, the garden pruned, and still, I left his property with that feeling, the pull of a storm that had passed, leaving both of us drenched in unspoken emotion, longing, and what-ifs. I didn't plan to go back to the house so soon. I had left a small tool behind the previous week, a wrench, of all things, and my pride demanded I retrieve it before anyone else found it. But the truth was, I wanted the excuse, any excuse to see him again. The afternoon was calm, the sun dipping low behind the trees, casting long shadows over the freshly trimmed lawn. When I arrived, I saw him sitting on the porch, alone. He wasn't just standing at the window or disappearing behind blinds. He was out there, actually outside, and it made my chest tighten in a way that made it hard to breathe. He looked up as I approached, a faint, tentative smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Back for something?" he asked, voice soft, careful. I nodded, holding up the small wrench. "Left this last week." He gestured for me to come closer. "Come inside," he said, and for a moment, I froze. "Come inside." Those words were heavier than any invitation I had ever received. My heart thudded in my chest, and my palms felt clammy, though the day was warm. The moment I stepped inside, warmth enveloped me not just from the room, but from him. The air smelled faintly of baking, of herbs, and something sweet I couldn't quite place. He led me to the kitchen, and my eyes widened slightly. A homemade pizza sat on the counter, steam curling from the golden crust. "I made this," he said quietly, almost shyly. "Thought you might like some food after all that work." I swallowed, suddenly nervous. I didn't know if it was the pizza or him or the way he said it, but something inside me felt like it was about to burst. "It smells amazing," I said, meaning it more than just the food. We ate quietly at first, the clinking of cutlery against plates filling the comfortable electric silence between us. I stole glances at him when he wasn't looking. The way his hair fell slightly over his forehead, the soft curve of his jaw as he chewed, the careful precision in how he moved his hands. Every detail seemed magnified, every small motion pulling me closer. Finally, I couldn't hold it in any longer. The memory of that stormy afternoon, of tea and tension and almost kisses, pressed on me like a physical weight. I set down my fork, clearing my throat. "About the other day," I began, my voice lower than I intended. He looked up, meeting my gaze, and I felt my stomach flip. I can't stop thinking about it." For a heartbeat, he said nothing. His eyes softened, and I saw something behind the careful mask he always wore, something real, something vulnerable. "I've thought about it too," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. And then, almost as if the words themselves gave him courage, he reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead, lingering near my temple. The world seemed to shrink to just the two of us. The smell of warm pizza, the soft hum of the ceiling fan, the faint scent of cedar, and something else him wrapped around me like a cocoon. I leaned in slowly, hesitating only for the fraction of a second, savoring the tension that coiled between us. His breath hitched, subtle but unmistakable, and I realized he was just as nervous, just as eager as I was. Our lips met, softly at first, tentative, testing. The kiss was electric and slow, the kind that unspools and layers curiosity, longing, relief, desire. His hands found mine, fingers threading together, holding me close without rushing, as if we both wanted to memorize this moment before it ended. I felt the tension melt away, replaced by something deeper, a warmth that spread from my chest down to my fingertips. The taste of him lingered, faint and intoxicating, mingling with the memory of that stormy afternoon, the almost kiss that had haunted me for a week. When we finally pulled back, neither of us spoke immediately. We just stared, breath mingling, hearts hammering in sync. "Thank you for coming back," he said quietly, his voice a soft rumble that sent shivers down my spine. "For not giving up." I smiled, still flushed, still caught in the haze of the kiss. "I couldn't stay away," I admitted, "even if I wanted to." He laughed softly, a sound that was surprisingly light for someone usually so reserved. "I'm glad," he murmured. His fingers lingered on mine, warm and grounding, and for the first time, the distance between us, the careful walls, the quiet hesitations felt like it was starting to dissolve. We spent the rest of the afternoon together, sitting on the porch with our knees brushing, talking softly about inconsequential things, the weather, books we were reading, small memories from childhood. And yet, every word carried weight, every glance was charged, every touch lingering just a second longer than necessary. I left that day with the wrench in my pocket, yes, but more importantly, I left with a sense of possibility, a new rhythm of hope pulsing in my chest. The storm had passed, but its memory lingered in the heat of our shared closeness, in the soft brush of hands, in the warmth of a first kiss that neither of us would forget. As I walked down the driveway, I realized something that made my chest ache with a delicious tension. I wasn't just coming back for the lawn anymore. I was coming back for him. So, thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and consider making a donation to our channel if you enjoyed this slow burn romance love story. See you soon.